In the middle of the 20th century, Irish Senator Joseph McCarthy unleashed a wave of fear, using unsubstantiated accusations of disloyalty to silence critics and to ruin reputations. The term born from that era, McCarthyism, has become a byword for a very specific kind of political demagoguery. As scholars Shannon Brickett, Frank Moles, and Gail Crimmins noted in the conversation, while the McCarthy era may have faded from our collective memory, it is crucial to understand its mechanics. They invoke philosopher George Santana's famous warning: those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. This is not just a history lesson. It is an active inquiry into the political architecture of a human rights institution, the dirty realism of the lived experience. I'm Kiana Canada, and this is Mimicking McCarthyism, an examination of an obstruction of justice, an employee at the Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission named Ivanka Antova, and the troubling questions of whether the institutions designed to protect human rights have failed in their duty. McCarthyism, more broadly, signifies a political purge of progressives of all kinds. We see reverberations of it today. We see it in the rhetoric of the Trump administration and others on the right stoking fears of the, quote, enemy within, end quote. But this coercive tactic is not confined to one country or one ideology. My investigation suggests a similar campaign has been adopted by Irish left-wing groups, finding a new home within the political and social landscape of Northern Ireland. It is a campaign trafficked by intelligence agencies and, disturbingly, by so-called ideal activists and academics in Northern Ireland who silence dissent to consolidate their own power. One of those ideal activists is Ivanka Antova. Antova, an immigrant from Bulgaria who earned a PhD from Queen's University Belfast in medical law and medical ethics, has positioned herself as a leading voice for human rights. She works for the Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission and has become a highly visible organizer for the United Against Racism movement in Belfast. But a critical question must be asked: is she wielding her considerable credentials and platform responsibly? Or are they being used as trustee steel for a different kind of operation? My own experience suggests the latter. I first met Antova at a film screening in 2024. She was on a panel, and I engaged with her asking questions about the rights of asylum seekers in Belfast. After the event, Antova approached me, suggesting we should meet to discuss community work. With the rise in state crime and transnational repression taking shape in Northern Ireland, I agreed. Subsequent to my agreement, we scheduled a time and a date. But Antova never appeared. Subsequent attempts to contact her via Facebook were ignored. This was my first indication that something was amiss. Was this her own choosing, or was she acting under the instruction of transnational agencies? Months would pass. During this time, Antova's name became a constant feature in the media, an authority on anti-immigrant sentiment in Northern Ireland. What was United Against Racism's core method, core goals? Did it include the lived experiences of Black Americans who found themselves in Northern Ireland, or was the organization using the Black Lives Matter logo to gain currency for its own groups, which excluded Black Americans? I saw Antova on Malone Road and showed concern for the conduct of her organization, United Against Racism. But Antova prevaricated, stating, "We're just a small organization." Her statement for me stood in stark contrast to her very public, media saturated appearances. It also raised a question of motive. What was the driving force? An altruistic desire to march against attacks on the innocent, or the allure of publicity and influence? Her true intentions became visible about a month ago at a protest in Belfast. I stood up to several potential allies, including Antova, to voice a critical concern that they were prioritizing high-profile, media-friendly cases over localized grassroots struggles. Her response was not a counter-argument. It was not a debate. It was a classic tactic of dehumanization. After I spoke, Antova turned to her fellow protesters and declared, "Guys, she's mentally ill." Let's pause and analyze this moment through a critical lens. This is not simply an insult. This is the modern-day equivalent of McCarthy's list of communists. It is an attempt to discredit, to pathologize, and to silence. It is a trope with a deep and harmful history, used to subjugate Black Americans and dismiss their legitimate political speech for liberation. Was Antova being instructed by the same authority figures I referenced in my first episode? If not, what could compel an anti-racism activist and a human rights researcher to use language deeply entangled with undertones found in the transatlantic slave trade and white supremacist playbook? To understand this, we can look to Antova's own academic work. In her own research, Antova and her colleagues quote the renowned sociologist Erving Goffman, who wrote about the concept of stigma. Goffman states, "While the stranger is before us, evidence can arise of his possessing an attribute that makes him different from others and category of persons available for him to be, and of a less desirable kind. He is thus reduced in our minds from a whole person, a whole and usual person, to a tainted and discounted one." The irony is profound, isn't it? Was Antova's goal in that moment to do exactly what Goffman described, to reduce me in the minds of her peers from a whole and usual person to a tainted and discounted one? This is the essence of the McCarthyist playbook, not to engage with the argument, but to destroy the character of the arguer. But beyond the historical parallels and ethical breaches, there is a potential legal dimension here. In Northern Ireland, the mental health order contains specific provisions designed to protect individual persons from exactly this kind of abuse. The law guards against documents or statements that are calculated to deceive others about a person's mental health. This includes false entries in reports or records. The phrase "for any purposes" is critically important. It encompasses the use of such falsehoods or for political purposes or administrative purposes, precisely to prevent the manipulation of mental health allegations to discredit someone. Now, under Section 119, an institution that makes use of any such false statement, knowing it to be false, may face criminal prosecution under the Forgery and Counterfeiting Act in Northern Ireland. This raises a broader question about public accountability. Did the representatives at the commission engage in conduct that could be construed as creating a false statement about me for a political purpose to silence and discredit my observations? The parallels with the dark past are clear. The mechanisms may have changed, but the goal remains the same: to taint, to discount, and to silence. The question for us all is whether we will remember this history or be condemned to watch and repeat it. I'm Kiana Canada. This has been Mimicking McCarthyism. The investigation into the North's use of the McCarthyist playbook continues.